There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right, open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him. He said, behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good day, everybody. Andy White here. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. And I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in to this week's brand new edition of Open Up the Doors. And I am streaming live over on my Facebook page. If you want to go over there and join in the conversation over there, see the live stream over there, tell me where you're watching from, do a meet and greet over there. I'll try and keep an eye on my comment stream as well. If you guys got any comments or questions during the course of the program, I will be happy to address them, assuming they're on topic. But listen, even better than that, if you want to call in later in the second hour, the phone number to call in is 631-725-2069, 631-725-2069. If you've never liked my Facebook page, by the way, give me a like over there. Share the stream around to your streams. You can also follow me on Truth Social at AJ White. That's Truth Social at AJ White. All right, I want to get right into it. I know I usually have more preliminaries, but I'll save them for later because I've really got a lot here that I want to get to, and I want to try and get to it really quickly to cover the things I hope to cover. I've got a very serious and sober. Well, you'll get it as we go along. But I want to report to you some things that have been in the international news more so than the American news, because the American media doesn't want to really relate these things, and everyone wants to stick their heads in the sand or have some kind of a Pollyanna kind of mentality. I just can't do that. I'm not wired that way. And I want you folks to know that every week I really seriously pray about the things I bring forth on this broadcast. And I was actually preparing some other things for this week. And then I really felt the Lord, as I was seeking him and praying, say that he wanted me to go with this, as serious, as heart-chilling as it is, because it is flying under the radar. And I also know what my listeners and what my audience expects of me in a certain way, why you guys, most of you, come to listen to this broadcast. And I try to balance all these things and bear in mind, and I'll just leave it there. But I want to read from you, quote to you out of the book of Revelation in chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. It's the chapter that talks about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and I'm going to specifically read about the second horseman just to get this ball rolling. When the Lamb, the Son of Man, when he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." And another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. Many years ago, Billy Graham wrote a book called Approaching Hoofbeats, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which he, as the title suggests, he talked about these four different horsemen. I read that book when I was a brand new believer. It was really back in the early 80s. I never forgot the title. I might have forgotten most of what I've read back then. And maybe, well, I won't get into that. That's digressing already. But the title was so captivating. Approaching Hoofbeats. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Can you hear the sound of those approaching hoofbeats, brothers and sisters? Because I hear them loudly. When you think of something like World War III, which was mostly what Billy Graham's book was about, amongst other things, but focused a lot on that, from what I remember. I read it 40-something years ago. But when you think about World War III, and I need to tell you, the world seems to be rushing headlong towards World War III. The very thought of it is horrific. Anyone who seriously ponders a nuclear war realizes the absolute horror of what it will unleash. And yet, there seems to be an almost inexplicable march towards a nuclear war. It's like they're beating the drums, the powers that be, towards a global war. The war in Ukraine with the Russians is a tragedy and a debacle that is so also dangerously expanding, and all parties seem to be losing control of the situation. And what I want to state at the outset is that what is most needed at this moment are the prayers of an awakened church that understands the times and the seasons. What is most needed is a prayerful, interceding church. But on another front, what is also needed, and which is what we ought to pray for, are leaders with calm heads who can think rationally. Leaders who realize they need to de-escalate the rising tension. We need leaders who will sit at the table and begin the process of negotiating an end to this insanity. But thus far, that is nowhere to be seen. Instead, the threats and the counter-threats, along with the nuclear saber-rattling, keeps getting ratcheted up. Now, Putin has been nuclear saber-rattling for quite a long time now, but he's really ratcheting it up lately, and he's really making very demonstrative military movements that I'll get to in a moment. In fact, I'll get to some right now. There are press reports out this week, just the other day, of the movement of a Russian nuclear munitions train heading to the front with Ukraine. We have spy satellites. We can see these things. Now, the Russians know we can see these things too. They're not stupid by any means. So, again, are they just trying to send a message? What are their real intentions? We don't know. It's like the nuclear sword of Damocles is hanging over the planet's head. But the reports have been that there has been a movement of a Russian nuclear munitions train to the front with Ukraine. Konrad Musika, that's how you pronounce his name, I don't know, but he's a Poland-based defense analyst, said the train, which was spotted in central Russia, is linked to the 12th Maine directorate of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and that it was responsible for nuclear munitions, their storage, maintenance, transport, and issuance of units. There have been reports of Putin bringing in more troops. He's been getting decimated in Ukraine. I don't think he's got his A team there. I think to some degree, well, you know what? I'll get into that later. But right now, let me try and focus here. There's so much going on, folks. I can forgive me because I can almost get into a sort of prophetic ADD, prophecy ADD, so to speak, or end times ADD. There's so much going on. You can't even keep up with it. But here we have these reports of these Russian nuclear weapons movements, and then just the other day on Tuesday, 4 Russian fighter jets were intercepted and forced to return to their base after they infringed upon Polish airspace and were heading towards Swedish airspace, according to Italy's Air Force. Let me read from the report. Aeronautica Militari, I guess that's the Italian Air Force, I guess, announced that the squadron took off from a Russian air base in Kaliningrad. Now, Kaliningrad is sandwiched in between Poland and Lithuania. It's a little enclave of Russia there. But these 4 Russian fighter jets took off from the air base there in Kaliningrad, and they flew, according to reports, they flew an aggressive straight path. They did it on purpose, which took them through Polish skies, the Polish air defense, and the Russian jets then continued as they buzzed over Poland. They circled back and they continued over the Baltic Sea, heading towards Sweden. Now, Italy quickly scrambled 4 Eurofighter Typhoon jets in response, which took off from Poland's Malbork Air Base and intercepted the Russian aircraft, forcing them to return back to Kaliningrad. Excuse me. You may be wondering why the Italians were there, because they're part of NATO, and it was their kind of their turn to be on this air defense schedule. But back in Russia, to add more to the intrigue, the political intrigue, so to speak. Back in August, Russia deployed MiG-31 fighter jets armed with hypersonic missiles at its airbase in Kaliningrad. These MiGs can be equipped with these nuclear warheads, with these hypersonic missiles. So we don't even know if they were on these particular planes, but you never know. Now, this is just a little bit of some of the things that have been going on. Believe me, if I went through the whole list of things, I'd be here all day. But despite all this, despite all of this saber rattling and movements that maybe try and prove a point, a lot of the political pundits here and around the world, even in Europe, but a lot of the political pundits and experts will tell you that Putin is cagey, but he's not crazy. And to a certain extent, one can only hope that that's true. But we still, and I still, think you need to take Putin seriously, because you can never really know what's going inside the mind of a demon-possessed madman who is hell-bent on reconstituting a Russian empire, which he most certainly is. Russia is getting its head handed to it on the Ukrainian battlefield, something no one expected. And there's no telling what cagey, crazy Putin will do to turn things around, because there is increasing concern about Russia's use of tactical nuclear weapons. He's losing many men. The Ukrainian army has been doing far better than anybody would realize, especially since we're giving them such high-tech military equipment, which has been exacerbating the issue. That's another story. It's another layer in this of onion skin. But if you want to wipe out a whole bunch of soldiers that are defeating your troops and pushing you back from land that you just recently annexed illegally, you just may say, I'm going to wipe them all out with 2 or 3 tactical nuclear weapons. This is the concern. And it's an absolutely valid concern, because Putin, just for himself and for his own nation, he has got no real answer as to what is happening on the battlefield using conventional means. He's lost helicopters and tanks. I mean, he's been getting decimated. I mean, the Russian ground troops have really proven themselves to be inept and incompetent. That's another story. But let's move the football downfield a little bit, because did you hear what ex-CIA chief and former Army General David Petraeus said just this past Sunday on ABC's This Week? I heard him say this, and I couldn't believe he was saying it. I said, what are you thinking? General Petraeus, I always respected you. I always thought you were a lot smarter than this. What wheels are turning in that head of yours? He said this past Sunday, quote, Russia faces an irreversible quagmire in Ukraine, which cannot be changed by nuclear threats. No amount of even veiled nuclear threats can get him out of this situation, Petraeus said. And when the host of This Week asked Petraeus, what if Putin does use tactical nuclear weapons? What would we do? Petraeus answered him this. Well, just to give you a hypothetical, we would respond by leading a collective effort that would take out every Russian conventional force that we can see and identify on the battlefield in Ukraine. And we'll take them out in Crimea as well. And we'll take out the entire Black Sea fleet, every ship in the Black Sea. Petraeus said it cannot go unanswered, but it doesn't expand. It's not nuclear for nuclear. You don't want to get into a nuclear escalation here, Petraeus said, but you have to show that this cannot be accepted anyway. But here's the thing, when he was saying this, my head was exploding. Does he really think that this wouldn't spin out of control? When I heard Petraeus saying these things, I was simply dumbfounded. Does he really think that Putin is going to sit back with folded arms as we take out his navy in the Baltic Sea and his military units in Crimea? Really? Seriously? We're just going to... And Petraeus, if you watch the clip, he says it so nonchalantly. Oh, we're just going to take him out. Really? Yeah, Putin's just going to let us go in there and wipe them all out. And he's not going to do anything in retaliation to that. See, this is called escalation. Now, folks, we need a credible defense posture as well as a serious and credible diplomacy to de-escalate the situation. Unfortunately for us right now is that we've got an administration that is incompetent and incapable of projecting any sort of credible strength or diplomacy. Afghanistan debacle sent the world a big message, sent our enemies a big message. And instead of a competent and credible peace through strength and a competent and credible statesmanship of good negotiators, instead we've got an administration that seems rather to be exasperating and increasing the tensions with its incendiary, rhetoric and its stupid policies. A week ago, for example, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan stated that there would be, quote-unquote, catastrophic consequences for Russia if it used nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Folks, there'll be catastrophic consequences for more than just Russia. Trust me on this. Vladimir Putin's ambassador to the UK, Andrei Kelin, warned that Russia will use nuclear weapons if our existence is threatened. As tensions rage within the West over Ukraine, Kelin said Moscow was ready to turn Ukraine into nuclear waste if it felt threatened by losses on the battlefield. He also said that they would turn Britain into nuclear waste as well. Oh yeah, we're just going to sit back and watch NATO like decimate us because they're mad at us. What? I'm sorry, I'm so incredulous. For months now, I've reported on this. For months now, on Russian state TV, they've been beating the drums of nuclear war. The head of the Russian Times, Margarita Simeon, stated a while back that either Russia will win against Ukraine or, quote, things will end badly for all of humanity. Who in their right mind thinks this way? Who in their right mind says these things on TV, on a news report? To me, it raises some questions, both from the Russian side, from the British side, from NATO side, from the American side. And here's my question today. Why does it seem that so many of our quote-unquote global experts and global leaders seem to want a global war? It's almost as if they seem to want a nuclear exchange. Now, you might think, oh, no, they don't. No, they don't. I think they do. I think they do because I think that they can control it just enough so as to be a limited war. You got to remember, these are the same people who believe the Earth's overpopulated. These are the same people that once the nukes start flying, they're going to run into their bunkers. They're going to run into their multi-million, the elites, the political elites, the Hollywood elites. They've been buying up for years underground, luxurious doomsday bunkers. The rest of us, we're toast in their mindset. We're fodder in their mindset. You don't think they might think that they can, in their wisdom, in their demonic wisdom, you don't think they think that they could depopulate the earth and set about their great reset out of the ashes of a limited nuclear war? I think that's exactly what they're thinking. I think that they think that their limited nuclear war they could then utilize to bring about their Agenda 2030 and their great reset. Now, having said all that, let me say this. I do believe it will be a limited exchange, not because they know what they're doing, but because that's not God's plan for the world. They won't be able to control it, but God will. It'll only be because of the sovereign plan and purpose of God that there won't be, hear me out, there won't be a total nuclear annihilation, because he's got another plan. Now, he's going to work all these things according to his purposes. But that being said, the rider on the red horse, the rider on the red horse, I heard somebody say, is being slapped. Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. When you look at the totality of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which I do believe is the beginning of the tribulation, 25% of the world's population is wiped out in those first four seals. And I am personally convinced, as I've shared many times with this audience, I am personally convinced that this coming global war, that this world will be embroiled in, for all intents and purposes, will be the war that will completely change, in its aftermath, the geopolitical landscape of the planet and the balance of power. The aftermath of World War III will completely alter the existing global order and will be, I believe, the major event which makes for the rise of the last days access powers and alliances that we see prophesied about in Daniel and Ezekiel and in Revelation. In short, folks, I do believe the consequences of World War III will give rise to the Antichrist kingdom of the beast. Can you hear the sound of the approaching hoofbeats. Stick around. I got some more good news to come. Bless God. I'll be right back, folks. Selah.
Can you hear it? Thunder in the distance. When we hear the shout of El Shaddai.
The shout of El Shaddai. Can you hear it? The thunder in the distance. Welcome back. Andy White here on the radio, tearing down strongholds. You are listening, if you're just tuning in, to Open Up the Doors, Integrity in Broadcasting here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7, 93.3 in that peak, WEGQ in Quag. And I got a heavy topic today. I understand that. So buckle up. Talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, talking about the outbreak of an imminent and impending global war, World War III. Wonderful topic. I wish I did not have to talk about this, honestly. I really do. But when the Lord impresses something upon you, you got to go with it. I got to go with what God's telling me to do. Now, World War III, I'm not saying it's going to happen today. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow or even the next day. But it could. It could. And I'm so reminded of what Jesus said in Luke 17. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. In the days of the coming of the Son of Man. In those last days. There's going to be a series of events. There's going to be these birth pangs, things going from bad to worse. And Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah. I was going to say, you know the thing. No, I won't go there. But what was his point? As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married, they were given in marriage. In other words, they were living their daily lives unaware, oblivious to their imminent and impending destruction. If that doesn't describe this present zeitgeist, I don't know what does. We have not been on the precipice of World War III this precariously since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we were closer to a nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis than most people ever realized at the time. It was just like it is today. Just another news story. Oh, what's going down there? What's going down there in Cuba? Oh, what's going on over there in Ukraine and Russia? It's just another news story. But the world at large, and American people at large, didn't know how close we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis until years later, when all of the records were made public. I'm saying all that to say this. The sabotage a few weeks ago of the Nord Stream pipeline was a game changer, friends. Don't let it fade in the news. It was a game changer. We don't know as of yet who sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline. And needless to say, if we did, if America did it, this administration would never admit to it. Of course they wouldn't. They're outright denying it now. But there are many who believe the U.S. did it, along with possibly the UK. Many in Europe think that we did it. And there are many who think that Russia did it. But here's the thing. I came across a real interesting article the other day from a former Pentagon advisor to former President Trump. And the title of the article was in Zero Hedge, A former Pentagon advisor says U.S. likely attacked Nord Stream pipeline to isolate Germany. Let that sink in for a moment. We have an public American official saying that we might have done it. We probably did do it in order to isolate Germany. But they're NATO partners. They're allies. What's going on here? A former Pentagon advisor says the most likely culprits behind the Nord Stream pipeline blast are the United States and Britain, and that the attack was carried out to prevent Germany from bailing out on the war in Ukraine. Douglas McGregor, former advisor to U.S. Defense Secretary in the administration of Donald Trump, argued the absurdness of the rhetoric that Russia was behind the Nord Stream attack, and that all of the pundits on TV and all of the political pundits on Europe, they were all blaming it on Russia. They're all blaming it on Russia. But he's flat out said the Russians did not do this. Again, he's making an evaluation. Douglas McGregor used a process of elimination, and it makes sense, folks. It just makes sense. McGregor said a process of elimination rules out, Germany didn't do it because they're dependent on Nord Stream for their energy security. While it also served no benefit for Russia to have sabotaged their own infrastructure. Would the Russians, he says, quote, would the Russians destroy their own pipeline? 40% of Russian gross national product or gross domestic product consists of foreign currency that comes into the country to purchase natural gas, oil, coal, and so forth. So, in his mind, the Russians did not do this. It doesn't make any sense. He says the notion that they did it, I think, is absurd. Now, the only thing you could say for that is that Putin's crazy. And he might have done it because he wanted to blame Britain. He wanted to blame the U.S. You can never know what's going on in the mind of a madman. But just in a logical sense, again, it doesn't make sense. And then there was this strange tweet by the Polish parliament. I don't know what position he holds, but this guy Radoslaw Sikorski, he deleted the tweet. But after the Nord Stream pipelines were blown up, he tweeted out, "Thank you, USA." He has since deleted that tweet. But McGregor is saying who else might be involved. The Polish, apparently because of that tweet, seem to be very enthusiastic about the Nord Stream being taken out. And he goes on to say that the reports are that the explosions, they use 500 kilotons of TNT. They don't know what kind of. They don't know if we don't know. We don't know if it was plastic explosive, put there by divers, or if it was a torpedo. We don't know. But the point is this Pentagon advisor, this isn't just some chump sitting on a panel on CNN. This former Pentagon advisor said that the United States and the British Navy are really practically the only powers who are capable to pull off such an attack. To quote McGregor, when you look at the state actors that have the capability to do this, and that means the Royal Navy and the United States Naval Operations. McGregor suggested that the motive behind the attacks was to prevent Germany from bailing on the Ukraine war after Berlin began to give the impression that they were no longer going to go along with this proxy war in Ukraine. Now, it raises eyebrows even further. According to a report, this is like, you got to scratch your head. According to a report by the German magazine Der Spiegel, the CIA warned Berlin about a potential attack on the gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea weeks before they happened. Now, that obviously raises a question. Everyone's saying we don't know, we don't know, we don't know. But if the CIA had intelligence that there was a planned attack on these pipelines, they'd have to know who was planning it. It just makes common sense. And if the if the CIA bombed these civilian pipelines, here's the bottom line. It's an insane act of war that will further devastate Europe's economy and risk a full-blown war with Russia. And when Secretary of State Anthony Blinken comes out with statements like, well, now that the Nord Stream is gone, it's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs. This is a very significant moment and offers tremendous strategic opportunity for the years to come. So here we have Anthony Blinken basically saying, this is great. We don't know who did it, or we're not claiming who did it, or we're not going to admit who did it, but this is great. This changes. This is our strategic opportunity. In the meantime, this winter, Europe is going to get really cold. Statements like that raises eyebrows. Statements like when Joe Biden says that we're going to put an end to the Nord Stream pipeline, and then a reporter asked how, he responds, "We have our ways of doing it." That raises eyebrows. So everyone is pointing their fingers at everyone else. But the bottom line is this. Let me just cut to the chase here. Putin is using the sabotage to his full advantage. Whether he did it himself to blame the West or whether the U.S. did it, in some ways it almost becomes a moot point. Because whoever is responsible for blowing up the pipeline, it's an act of war that has brought this world much, much closer to a world war. This past week, the Swedish Navy, it's going on right now, the Swedish Navy has sent a submarine and deep sea divers to go and investigate the damaged pipeline to see if they can find evidence of who sabotaged it. Will they find evidence? I don't know. But if they do find evidence, will they release their findings publicly? That remains to be seen. But no matter what, because of this and a whole bunch of other things, Europe is about to embark on a cold and long winter where energy prices, have you heard this, folks? Energy prices have gone up for the average European almost $3,000 a month to heat their homes. Can you even imagine having a heating bill that's $3,000 a month? Stick around. I'll be back. Got to take a break. The Fusion, Part, Mind, and Soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7, 93.3 in Apega, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. Thanks for joining in, everybody. I am streaming live on my Facebook page all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Listen, by way of quick program note memo, the first hour of this broadcast re-airs today, Thursday at 3 p.m., as well as on Saturday at 1 p.m. If you missed any part of the broadcast, you can go back and listen to it, or you can listen to it on my YouTube platform, my YouTube channel, as well as my Rumble channel. If you've never subscribed to either, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just look up Andy White, open up the doors, and subscribe over there on YouTube. Hit the little notification bell, and you'll be notified when we do upload these edited down broadcasts to YouTube as well as Rumble. You can find me on Rumble at AJWhite777. I'd appreciate if you guys would please subscribe to my Rumble channel. I'd appreciate it so very much. I will be going to the phones, as I said, during the second hour, which is coming up in a few short minutes. If you'd like to write down the phone number so you can be the first to call in, the phone number is 631-725-2069. That's 631-725-2069. 069. Please call in. Let me know your thoughts about what I've been discussing today. If you have any questions, we'll try and field those questions the best we can. I have been kind of asking and saying, why, I don't know why this phone's ringing now, but I'm going to turn that off. I can't take that right now. Call in during the second hour. Not taking your calls right now. Sorry. Anyway, it seems like the world is rushing headlong into World War III. Now, I do believe that, without a question of a doubt, you could ask the question why in the natural, but I know why in the spiritual, because we have powers and principalities that are bringing this world to its those days of the coming of the Son of Man. It's the plan of God. So on the one hand, you can almost say it's inexplicable what's going on in the natural, but for those of us who understand the Word of God, it's not inexplicable. The answers are within the Word of God. But looking at these reports right now, looking at what is going on before our very eyes, the reason I said a moment ago, I said at the top of the broadcast, it seems like these people want World War III. Where are the negotiators? Where are the statesmen? Do you know that back in April, Putin and Zelensky were very near a negotiated deal way back in the spring? But it was Britain, along with the U.S., that told Zelensky no, and they squashed it. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why does it seem that these people actually want a war with Russia? Because of regime change? Because they want to get rid of Putin? They better learn from history. I came across a very interesting article the other day, written by a guy named Sam Faddis. The name of his article was "The Tsar Did Not Have Nuclear Weapons." I just want to pull out a few things from this article. As you know, I've said many, many times, that which was is that which will be, the prophetic pattern, the prophetic pattern. That which was is that which will be again. There's nothing new under the sun. And as I was reading this, I was so intrigued. Sam Faddis writes this in his article. In 1914, at the outset of the First World War, the Russian army was known throughout Europe as the Russian steamroller. The Russian steamroller. The Russian army was thought that they would just be able to steamroll way over Europe. The Russian army was massive. The Tsar had appeared to have unlimited resources. It's like today. We all thought Putin would just roll into Ukraine. His army was undefeatable, and it didn't work out that way. Look what happened in 1914. Everyone was sure the Russians would march across Europe and crush their enemies. It was not to be. The Russian army was poorly trained and poorly led. It fell apart. It suffered defeat after defeat. Those defeats contributed in no small measure to the end of the monarchy. The Russian Revolution and the rise of the Soviet Union came out of the aftermath. It is no exaggeration to say that we are still dealing with the ripple effects of the fall of the Tsar a century later. Nicholas II was a despot, but his overthrow, regime change, his overthrow did not lead to a liberal, more democratic Russia. Instead, we got Stalin, famine in the Ukraine, purges of dissidents that killed millions, generations of oppression, the Cold War, and a nuclear arms race, all out of the Bolshevik Revolution. I'm just adding that into what he said. Turns out, he writes in his article, regime changes have a lot of consequences, many of which are bad. Somebody in Washington ought to pick up a book, bone up on some history, and think about all that before it is too late. He says this in the article, and it certainly caught my attention. What will emerge on the other side of a catastrophic global war is unknowable. Well, actually, I think it is knowable. The rising of the beast, the rising of the Antichrist kingdom. But he writes, what will emerge on the other side of that catastrophe is unknowable. But it will not be a future filled with sweetness and light. It will be dark, horrifying, and enduring. Well, at least for 7 years anyway. I don't know if he realizes what he's writing here. But he goes on to end his article, and I've only pulled out some small tidbits from it. In 1917, most of the civilized world celebrated the fall of the Tsar and the dissolution of the Russian Empire. All the pundits of the age were sure that what was coming would be better, more humane, and more enlightened. It was not. It was a horror on a scale the world had never seen before. We need to take several step backs, cool down the rhetoric, and discard any fantasies about toppling Putin and remaking Russia. This war needs to come to a negotiated settlement before we tumble into the abyss. Putin may be just the latest tyrant to rule in Moscow, but he has one asset the Tsar never dreamed of. Putin has nuclear weapons. Folks, this broadcast is focused on the Russian, Ukrainian, European situation. I didn't even touch upon what happens if China invades Taiwan, which I believe is coming very soon. I didn't even discuss what happens between Israel and Iran should Israel decide to take out the Iranian nuclear capabilities. But just remember, all things that are written must come to pass. Therefore, we need to be informed. We need to know the word. We need to be prepared. We need to be prayed up, come what may. Spiritual preparedness, practical preparedness. You know, the last few weeks, actually the past summer, New York City was running these quote unquote PSAs on what to do in case of a nuclear blast. They're actually kind of silly. If you're in New York City and you're anywhere near New York City getting blown up, you're not going to have time to run into your house. You're just not. You're going to be just instantly with Jesus if you know him. But just yesterday in Newsmax, it said this: some of America's biggest cities have started warning residents to prepare for a nuclear emergency, citing President Vladimir Putin's persistent atomic threats. And they go on to say how New Jersey has been having these PSAs. They've been putting it on the side of buses in New Jersey. Do you know what to do in a radiation emergency? And there are things that you can do. I mean, there are practical measures we can take. For those who are outside of the blast zone, you do need to have a game plan on how to survive. And there are things out there. There's an old book out that I would suggest you buy a copy of. You may think I'm crazy. You may think it's stupid. You may wish you had it should this go down. Me and my wife ordered a copy of it just the other day. It's called Nuclear War Survival Skills. What to do. It's a big book. It's like 317 pages. It's put out by a guy who worked for the government. Anyway, Nuclear War Survival Skills by Cresson Kearney. You should check it out. We ordered one. Good thing. It's just a good thing to have in case. And actually, it's for any kind of a disaster, really. But those of you who live in rural areas, as I've been saying for years now, stock up on your necessities, stock up on food, water, stock up on the things you're going to need, because you're going to need them. And those of us who live in coastal areas by big cities, well, be ready to meet Jesus. Hallelujah. I'm not afraid of any of this stuff, folks, because I know in the end, God wins. But I'm at the end of my first hour here, and I got to go. Stick around because there's more to come here on Open Up the Doors. Be back in a few minutes for the second hour. Keep it right here on Faith FM. God bless.